It started with petty fines, fake violations, and empty threats. Then one morning they showed up at my door, badges flashing, voices firm, telling me I was under arrest for violating HOA regulations. What they didn't know was that I'm a U.S. Marshal, and they had just tried to arrest the wrong man. Let me start from the beginning. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from. Karen was the kind of person who lived for control. She didn't just follow the rules, and she worshipped them. And when there weren't enough rules to enforce, she simply made new ones. I should have known she'd be trouble the first time I met her, but I had no idea just how far she'd go to try and control me. It began small. A letter in the mailbox, crisp envelope, HOA logo printed in shiny gold letters. Dear homeowner, you are required to register your property under the Oak Ridge HOA and comply with all community guidelines, including monthly dues and maintenance fees. Required? That made me laugh. I'd chosen this property specifically because it wasn't part of any HOA. The second page listed a fine, $250 for failure to maintain property aesthetics. I glanced around. My yard was freshly mowed. The driveway clean, my truck parked neatly. What exactly was I failing to maintain? I tossed the letter in the trash and went on with my day. Then another letter came. And another. By the end of the week, my mailbox was overflowing with fake violation notices. $100 for unauthorized exterior modifications. Nothing had changed. $150 for excessive noise. I worked night shifts and was barely home. $200 for failure to submit a landscaping plan, whatever that meant. Karen wasn't just making things up. She was testing me and waiting to see if I'd give in and pay. I ignored every single one. That's when she changed tactics. One morning, I walked outside to find her standing in my driveway, clipboard in hand, watching me. She didn't look away when I met her eyes. She wanted me to see her there. When I walked over, she made a show of checking her gold watch like I'd kept her waiting. "Oh, good," she said with a practiced smile. "I was hoping to catch you." I leaned against my truck, arms crossed. "Something you need, Karen?" She flipped through her papers and held one out like it was a court order. "I just wanted to personally remind you about your outstanding violations," she said. "You haven't made any payments yet." I barely glanced at the paper. "Karen, I'm not part of your HOA." Her smile didn't fade. "Well," she said sweetly, "Oak Ridge Estates has certain expectations for all surrounding properties. It's only fair that everyone contributes." I laughed. Short, humorless. "Fair? Let me make this clear. I don't answer to you. Stop stuffing my mailbox with fake violations because they're going straight in the trash." For a split second, her friendly mask slipped. Her jaw tightened, her grip on the clipboard stiffened. Then just as fast, she plastered that fake smile back on. "Well," she said, adjusting her blazer, "I do hope you reconsider. You wouldn't want to make things difficult for yourself." I tilted my head. "Is that a threat?" She laughed lightly. "Of course not. Just a friendly reminder, this community values cooperation." I took a step closer. "Here's a reminder for you. If I get one more fake notice, I'll file a harassment complaint. You can play queen of the HOA all you want, but you have no authority over me." Her smile twitched. Then she spun around and walked off, heels clicking down my driveway. I watched her go, shaking my head. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, I found garbage dumped on my lawn. A week later, my mailbox was knocked over. Then came the whispers. Neighbors glancing away when I passed, muttering behind my back. At first, I thought I was imagining it, until I ran into Jim at the gas station. Jim was an old-timer, lived here for decades, didn't talk much, but when he did, it mattered. He gave me a sympathetic look as he filled his tank. "Hope you get things sorted soon," he said. I frowned. "Sorted out?" Jim sighed. "Karen's been telling people you've got legal trouble. Says you're one of those homeowners who dodges responsibilities. Even mentioned something about a warrant." I blinked. "A warrant?" That was a new one. He just shook his head. "You know how she is, HOA politics." "Politics?" No, this was a smear campaign. And the next morning it got worse. A letter marked final notice arrived from the Oak Ridge HOA legal department. Inside it said, "Failure to comply with HOA policies will result in legal action. A warrant has been issued for your continued refusal to adhere to community guidelines." I stared at it for a long moment, then laughed out loud. Karen had finally lost her mind. "A fake warrant?" She actually thought that would scare me. That's when I knew she wasn't going to stop. She was escalating. And the next time she tried something, she was going to regret it. Because what Karen didn't know was that she had just picked a fight with the U.S. Marshals. Her petty fines were one thing, but when I got a letter claiming there was a warrant for my arrest, that's when I knew she'd crossed the line. The letter looked official, the wording, the layout, but I've seen real warrants. I've signed off on real arrest orders. This wasn't one of them. There was no agency listed, no case reference, and no judge's signature. Just one name at the bottom, Karen Whitmore, HOA president. I nearly spit out my coffee. She actually thought she could scare me with a fake arrest notice. Almost impressive. Almost. I tossed the paper on my desk and leaned back, thinking. Karen had gone from harassment to legal fraud. I could have called her out right then, maybe even pressed charges. But instead, I decided to wait, to let her dig her own hole. And she did. The next morning, a bright red notice was taped to my door. Final warning. Failure to pay will result in arrest. I just shook my head. Karen was really committing to her little fantasy. By the end of the week, there were 3 more notices. She wanted me to think I was one step away from being dragged off in cuffs. Then came Friday. I stepped outside to find 2 men standing in my driveway, wearing matching uniforms, clipboards in hand and cheap plastic badges clipped to their belts. They stared. I stared back. Finally, one cleared his throat. "Are you the homeowner?" I folded my arms. "Who's asking?" The taller one squared his shoulders. "We're with the Homeowners Association Enforcement Division. We're here to discuss your outstanding violations." I almost laughed. Homeowners Association Enforcement Division? Karen had actually hired fake cops. I tilted my head, keeping my voice steady. "Is that so?" The shorter one nodded stiffly. "We have an active warrant for your arrest." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't say?" The taller one held up his clipboard. "Per HOA code violations, you've repeatedly failed to comply with community." The taller man cleared his throat. "You violated multiple HOA regulations and have outstanding fines. We're here to bring you in." I let the silence stretch before I smiled. "All right," I said calmly. "Let's see the warrant." The short one blinked. "You already got the notice, and I know." I cut him off. "The real one. Show me the court-issued arrest warrant." The taller man shifted uneasily. "Well, the HOA board issued it." "Oh, the HOA board," I repeated slowly. "And does the HOA have legal authority to issue arrests?" They froze. I could practically see the gears turning in their heads as they tried to come up with an answer that didn't make them sound completely ridiculous. I let them sweat for a few more seconds, then sighed, reached into my back pocket and pulled out my badge. Not a plastic one, not a prop, a real U.S. Marshal badge. I held it up between 2 fingers so they could see it clearly. The moment they did, their faces turned white. "You two," I said evenly, "just tried to detain a federal officer." The tall guy's jaw dropped. The short one actually stepped back. I smiled faintly. "Now I've got 2 questions. First, where exactly is your authorization to conduct arrests?" Silence. "Second, would you like to be charged with impersonating law enforcement before or after I run your names?" That did it. The taller one dropped his clipboard. The short one spun on his heels and bolted down the street. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching them scatter like cockroaches. I didn't chase them, not yet, because now I had them, and when I ran their names later that day, I found far more than I expected. Karen wasn't just running a fake security squad. She was running a full-blown extortion ring. Her little HOA enforcement division was nothing more than a scam operation. Fake cops, fake fines, real victims, and it had been going on for months. Here's how it worked. Find a homeowner who refused to join the HOA, hit them with bogus citations and invented fines. If they ignored them, send in the HOA police to intimidate them. If they still didn't pay, seize their property for unpaid debts and resell it to HOA-friendly buyers for a profit. It was organized theft. Families had lost their homes over this, and no one had stopped her, because Karen wasn't working alone. When I dug deeper into city records, I found a familiar name, a local judge who had repeatedly ruled in Karen's favor, a magistrate who had signed off on property seizures without verifying any of her claims. Either he was lazy, or Karen had him in her pocket. Either way, this was my leverage. If her rulings weren't legally valid, every foreclosure she'd pushed through could be overturned. That meant lawsuits, refunds, and felony charges. Karen had built her empire on fake authority, and I was about to tear it down brick by brick. But first, I needed to see how far she'd go, so I baited her. I took one of her fake citations on the latest final notice warning of legal action and responded. I sent a formal request for a hearing, pretending to be scared and willing to negotiate, and predictably, Karen took the bait. The next day, I got an email, a summons to an official HOA arbitration hearing. No courthouse, no legal address, just a time, a date, and a warning that failure to appear would result in further legal consequences. I almost laughed. Karen was about to walk straight into her own trap. The so-called hearing was set for Friday afternoon. Not in a courtroom, but in a rented community center meeting hall. Translation: completely fake. Karen had staged a mock trial just like she'd done before to intimidate people into paying bogus fines or signing over their property. But I wasn't there to negotiate. I was there to end it. I made my calls. To local law enforcement, the district attorney's office, and the U.S. attorney's office. Because this wasn't just HOA fraud anymore. This was federal, mail fraud, wire fraud, extortion, impersonation of officers. It was time for Karen to face real justice. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at the head of a long table like she was presiding over a courtroom. Clipboard ready, a cheap wooden gavel by her side. Yes, she actually brought a gavel. Behind her sat 3 board members, trying and failing to look like legal officials. Across from them were 2 homeowners I recognized, people she'd targeted before. They looked nervous. Karen, on the other hand, looked smug. She smiled when she saw me. "Glad you could make it," she said, motioning to a chair. I sat down slowly, folded my hands, and smiled back. "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't miss it." She immediately launched into her routine, reading off fake violations, inflated fines, and made-up legal jargon. Words like breach of contract and community infraction. They sounded serious but meant absolutely nothing. I wasn't really listening. I was watching her. The way her voice sped up as she read, the way she avoided eye contact, glancing at the clock again and again, like she was waiting for something. Then it hit me. She wasn't just trying to intimidate me. She was stalling. I leaned back, tilting my head. "Let me guess," I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Your HOA police are on their way to arrest me?" The silence was deafening. One board member shifted uncomfortably. Karen's eyes flicked toward the door. Bingo. I checked my watch and stood. "Well," I said evenly, "before they get here, why don't we call in some real legal professionals?" Right on cue, the doors burst open. Uniformed officers filled the room. Karen's face drained of color. One of the board members dove under the table, and behind the officers stood the assistant U.S. attorney, a woman who'd seen enough scams for a lifetime and had a stack of legal documents ready to bury Karen's operation. "Karen Whitmore," she announced, unfolding an arrest warrant. "You are under arrest for fraud, extortion, impersonation of law enforcement, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." Karen's mouth fell open. "Wait, you don't understand," she shouted. "Oh, we understand," I said, arms crossed. "You just tried to run a fake court to steal property and sent fake officers to arrest me. Not your smartest move, Karen." She turned desperately to the board. "Do something." But they were already backing away, hands raised, silent. Karen wasn't in charge anymore. She was alone. As the officers cuffed her hands behind her back, she finally realized it was over. "You're making a mistake," she screamed. "This is all a misunderstanding." The U.S. attorney shook her head. "We'll let the judge decide that." Karen kicked and shouted all the way out of the room as flashing lights from the police cars lit up the walls. The same people she'd bullied for years sat frozen in disbelief. Then slowly the room erupted. Shock, relief, anger as it finally hit them that the monster running their HOA was gone. When the news broke, the truth spread fast. Neighbors came forward with stories of forged documents, fake liens, and illegal threats. One couple said Karen tried to force them to sell a house that wasn't even under HOA jurisdiction. Another had paid thousands in bogus fines just to make her stop harassing them. Karen had spent years abusing her position, and now she was done. Within a week, the entire HOA board was under investigation. Within a month, the HOA itself was dissolved. No more fake police. No more bogus citations. No more Karen. She tried to fight the charges, blamed the board, the fake officers, even claimed she was the victim. But the evidence was overwhelming. Fraud, wire fraud, extortion, impersonating law enforcement. When the judge handed down the sentence, there was no probation, no fine, just prison time. The same woman who'd spent years threatening people with fake legal action was now sitting behind real bars, under real authority. The HOA was gone. The homeowners got their refunds. The families she'd driven out filed lawsuits and got justice, and me? I finally had peace. Every time I walk past Karen's old house, now just another for sale sign on the lawn, I can't help but smile, because in the end, she thought she was untouchable. But she never saw the real law coming for her.